Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
Well, it's good to be back after a short, brief break. I'm ready to get into it. And I was absolutely shocked, Steve, to find out that one of the platforms we're using to host the podcast has taken a decidedly daft turn. If this article from The Verge was anything to go by, with Vimeo effectively telling creators to suddenly pay thousands of dollars or leave the platform. That kind of headline kind of jumps out, especially when you're using the platform.
Yeah, it's a weird one, but I guess it's sort of very modern, isn't it? Where your only connection to the platform is via a bot and you never see a friendly face or have any personal relationship. It's a bit hard to get, how you feel about these changes across to management.
The thing that actually sort of buzzes me out is I guess it immediately sort of highlights that there aren't actually a lot of video hosting options. So prominent ones anyway. So you would think automatically YouTube is number one. Obviously, Vimeo was marketed as the almost like the LinkedIn of video streaming services, where the professional filmmaker or whatever would showcase their work on Vimeo because it was a cut above because the cat videos weren't on Vimeo, although I'm sure there's plenty of those on there too. So when something like this comes up, which kind of threatens one of those options, it kind of highlights how fragile some of this is, especially if going by what they were saying, that if certain creators are having to pay thousands of dollars just because they were supposedly causing a bandwidth spike issue for Vimeo. That's not really that good at all.
No, it's not. And I think it also, as you said, highlights how much things change in time. I mean, certainly our first experience with Vimeo was it hosted better quality video than YouTube, and, it guaranteed us a better audience as well.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though, because, in the article, they specifically look at the cost of hosting or streaming high quality video and the bandwidth that consumes and the cost that is to the Vimeo platform. It's a bit hard to actually work out what's going on, whether Vimeo's targeting what they feel are high value clients of the platform that should be paying more, and it's just a case of the price going up through the roof overnight when maybe that price should have been there for much longer, or whether, as the Vimeo CEO says, this is just a whole change in business model, and if you don't like it, see you later.
Lastly, before we move on, it could just be a boneheaded business decision that it doesn't have much foresight in terms of the consequences.
Well, that's right, and we'll probably talk about one more of those today anyway.
Absolutely. Before we jump into that one, did have to highlight this really cool story about the James Webb Telescope, and obviously we talked about it before, but it's it kind of slips off the radar, and there was that whole thing about they were worried about the amount of time and effort that and they had to be worried about making sure that the whole thing unfolded in space properly into the correct position and everything. And then they did this test shot, and it turned out to be even more spectacular than what they were expecting. And even just looking at it, it's just incredible that the detail and resolution that was in there. And you can understand why all these scientists and astrophysicists and whatever who are looking at it. I mean, even just as the layperson, it's exciting to see an image like that because it's just that much more high resolution than what we've ever been able to get before.
Well, there's no pixels that we can see in this shot, and I think that's what's just so amazing. And isn't it wonderful when we do something in space that sometimes people go, why do we do these things? But when you make an achievement of a telescope the size of a tennis court that's self-assembled in space, that is a remarkable achievement. And when the result is being able to view pictures like this, and these are only the first, wow. So, to me, it makes me very happy because it makes me feel like we're one step closer to the Star Trek generation.
Absolutely. And as one of the people that worked on it apparently said this week, you want the least amount of moving parts in something like this, and unfortunately this had the most moving parts, so they kind of breathed a sigh of relief when it unfolded the way it should have and focused up and did what it did. So it'll be exciting to see what images it generates for the decades to come that it's in use.
Absolutely. I can't wait.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's go back to boneheaded business decisions in the tech sphere. So this whole idea of Microsoft experimenting with ads in the Windows 11 File Explorer, and it makes me like, I use Windows. I've used Windows a lot, and I've got nothing against the operating system itself, but I mean, really, I guess, is this like just some sort of throwback to the fact that we used to generate lots of income from this platform and we're not anymore? So how do we squeeze more blood out of the stone on the end user point? It's hard to know, but can you imagine you're trying to get some work done, you're trying to get into your files or whatever, and you're getting, for clarity, of course, we're not talking about, a Coke ad popping up in your File Explorer. This is probably just more ads, say directing you to more Microsoft services or something like that. But still, it's irritating. You don't want pop-ups saying, "Oh, have you tried the latest feature? It's only $12.95 a month."
This is a throwback to the paperclip, Ben. Does everyone remember the paperclip in Word? Yeah, that's what this is. And some genius has said, we've done it before. This time we'll just advertise Microsoft products, and they probably will be delivered like tips. Hey, you seem to be using a lot of bandwidth. Why don't you upgrade to OneDrive level, tier, whatever? Who knows? I don't think it's a bad idea, but gee, they're really going to want to get the execution right on this, because it could become a really bad idea very quickly.
Oh, and for all of you still on Windows 10, which is probably the majority, you're not going to be spared. Apparently, it's going to be migrated to Windows 10 as well. It's not just a Windows 11 thing.
So backward compatible. That's even better.
Absolutely. Alrighty. All right. Let's. We're going to focus now a bit on some of the Apple announcements that recently came out. But first, wanted to touch on just another experience. Shooting some footage and using the iPad to put something together, which I'll overlay now. It was quite fun. I think I've already done a couple of these already, but it just goes to show that you can use these truly mobile devices to give. It's kind of like a relaxed kind of almost pleasurable experience, as opposed to I'm sitting at a workstation, editing all this stuff and getting it all done and stuff. But you can just produce all these things. You can get them. You can upload them, to the internet. So in this case, up to our SciTech Culture YouTube channel, no problems at all, straight from the iPad. Shooting in Log 3 and Filmic Pro, so you get the raw video. You can tweak it as much as you like, etc. The only thing I'd say is that on the one hand, there was a certain ease to do it on the iPad, but on the other hand, they really just need to plug some gaps in iPad OS to truly make it properly functional. Now, the cynic is obviously saying that they don't want to lose sales of their Macs because Final Cut obviously gives you the file management and granular control that you can't really get on the iPad. But at this point, there doesn't seem to be a reason why the iPad couldn't have those things. But I guess if they put those things in there, then you wouldn't be buying a Mac then, would you?
Well, look, first up, Ben, fantastic videos, really well done. And thank you for sharing that with us and showing us the process. Because in my mind, Steve Jobs is looking down, he's seeing you sat on the sofa, colorizing your video, and he's amazed at the results and the fact that you can just do it in a relaxed manner. On the other side, I'm sure he's screaming as well because, I don't think Apple knows what it's doing with its product range anymore. They hold things back and then they release cannibalistic like products anyway, which we're probably about to discuss. So I don't understand why they hold back on these things. Personally, now I'm getting more upset by the day that my iPhone 13 doesn't have a USB-C port. So and I can't see any reason why. I really can't. So when my MacBook Pro has, and I think these are the sorts of things that we're seeing that leave us scratching our heads.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive into that. So Apple recently had its first big keynote for the year, announcing some new products. The new iPhone SE and the iPad Air, we can sort of skip past those because perfectly good for what they are and the place that they have in the lineup. The iPhone SE, I feel, I think that hits a particular market. I'm not so sure about the iPad Air, to be honest, because as we said in our product review thing a month ago or so, you either get the least expensive one at the bottom or just get the one at the top. Don't bother in the middle, but it depends. Maybe you like one of the new colors or something that it comes in. But the thing that really kind of stood out to me was the Mac Studio, because this is like the first effectively new product, I guess, that they've come out with. Now, you could argue it's just a big Mac Mini, supercharged Mac Mini, but I think, like, I look at this and I think a lot of the commentary's borne this out, is like it's got that much power in it and that much functionality, that many ports. Versatility with being able to plug into whatever monitors you want or multiple monitors, etc., that you have to wonder what you would get a Mac Pro for at this point if you're inclined to use one of those products. I mean, on the one hand, I was really impressed by it because although it's got a high price tag, if you remember, like, just take the ports, for instance. They're all high-speed, high-end ports. If you were to try and get a dock that had all of those built in to the same specifications, you'd probably be looking at $400-500 to plug that in. So you immediately should really just take that off the price of the Mac Studio just to get a proper comparison as to how much this thing costs. But it does make me wonder because, I'm obviously looking at what's my lineup, what am I going to use? And, this kind of complicates it, and I think goes to what you were saying, because this is actually a reasonably priced entry point for the higher end M1 Max chip, because previously you only could get it in the last MacBook Pro that they released, and you had to spend in Australian dollars, I think, well over $4,500 to get that chip, and this you can get it for $3,000. Now, granted, you have to plug in a monitor and all that stuff, but what do you get? And I don't think this is going to end. I have a feeling they're going to introduce another one of these that's in between the Mac Mini and the Mac Studio, which is going to further, that'll probably be based on the M1 Pro, and then you've got another option to pick. But do you pick this, or do you pick the high-end MacBook Pros to get your work done, or and then you've got all the other iPads and everything that you can use for a lot of tasks as well. And I think it goes to your point about the diversification of their product line that makes it hard to pick what to get. And confoundingly, they did tease at the end of this announcement that a Mac Pro was coming still, and it's like, well, what possibly could it have that would justify it being better than what this is, other than maybe the ability to plug in your own cards or something like the traditional Mac Pros have had?
Yeah, look, I'm completely lost in this product range at the moment. So with the MacBook Pro I have, with the M1 chip, I can only connect to one monitor at a time. If I'd gone out and got the Max, I think that has a capacity for multiple monitors. So, but there doesn't seem to be. But if you go out and get a Mac Mini, that can hook up to multiple monitors. I don't understand why all these inconsistencies exist in the range. I think you make a great point. Effectively, your Mac Studio is a dock as well as its own, its own computing entity in this post-PC world. So it's an amazing piece. I mean, I think it replaces effectively the iMac. But we don't know what the plans for the iMac are, and maybe they'll just, let the iMac be as it is and transition this way. Maybe Apple doesn't really want to sell monitors of any kind anymore. Except the really high end ones. It's impossible to tell, and I think, I'm not hugely into Apple and Mac anymore, or anticipating what they might do, but I certainly feel lost with their products, and I feel lost now that I see these sorts of products with this sort of functionality, and I've got an iPhone 13 with the wrong port in it.
Absolutely. But just to confuse it even further, they actually did come back further into this where we're supplying displays again with because alongside the Mac Studio they announced a Studio display that is effectively the same screen as the 27-inch iMac, just the screen, and it's got a webcam in it and speakers and more ports in it and all that sort of thing, which is meant to complement the Mac Studio. And obviously you can plug in any Mac into it if you want, and it's designed to be the affordable display that the Pro XDR that they released wasn't. And again, you sit there and you think a 27-inch display, you get this Mac Studio, or you could buy a Mac Mini or something, and then all of a sudden you don't need a 27-inch iMac anymore. And it may be that maybe it's this whole thing about reversing course from the 2016 to 19 period where like the Pro kind of got demoted in the lineup, and that's where you started to get Macs without proper ports on them and all that sort of stuff. And this is just a massive course correction away from that because there was such a backlash from the Pro community. Why aren't you giving us the Macs that we knew and love in the past? And now they're almost going like full throttle in the other direction. And that's not to say there aren't achievements in there. I mean, the M1 Ultra chip, which is fusing two M1 Max chips together through that interconnector thing, so that it looks like it's one chip, like brilliant engineering, and and it's making what Intel's doing to be. I mean, I'm sure Intel will catch up at some point, but they haven't got the fact that it's running on such low power requirements and all that sort of thing is extremely impressive. But again, it's just like, well, what do you get out of all of this? What do you choose? Like I'm still like wanting to play out the rest of the year to see how the rest of the lineup looks, and then maybe try and figure it out. But I'm starting to wonder, just get one of the MacBooks and that's it, and don't even bother.
Yeah, I know. I keep on raving about my MacBook. It's quite obviously one of the original generation, and if I'd known what was coming, maybe I would have held out. But I'm not in the slightest bit concerned. And I think, as I've said before, my MacBook and a monitor is pretty much all you need. But I think we are seeing a big change. I don't know if any of these changes now are also driven by the supply chain issues we've seen over the last 2 years, plus Apple moving away from Intel to their own chipsets. But we'll see where this goes. But it always makes me nervous when I can't decipher what I should be buying in an Apple catalogue.
Absolutely. And I guess just one final point, because you just touched on it then, just pulling it back to that new iPad Air that got released or got announced in March, that comes with an M1 chip now. Yeah. And I guess the reaction was, why is that one getting an M1? But again, it's probably what you were saying, it's the supply chain thing. They've probably got, they probably went all in on M1 production, and they've probably got heaps of them, lying around. They need the A15 chip, which is probably what should have gone into the iPad Air if it was following the pattern from the previous generations, but they need the A15 chip for the iPhones, so they don't want to shortchange the iPhone, which is their big money maker. So they just said, we'll just chuck M1s into the iPad Air now, and it leads to confusion because then obviously there was another thing about, which do you buy, the iPad Air or do you buy the iPad Pro 11-inch?
Or do you get a MacBook Air?
Yeah. and again, it's like, it's almost like you've got to be you really got to target and specifically look at what features are on that device to see if it exactly matches what you need, because there's just so much overlap with all this sort of stuff.
And this is my point, I guess, is that what I'm finding is that I can't find the perfect use case in any one Mac.
Yeah.
anymore, which used to be Mac's selling point. That's the Mac. That does everything I need. Now it's like, well, I'm going to have to go and buy a dongle, you know.
Yeah, I know it's not good, but anyway, I mean, maybe this is just a feature of a company that's become, you know, one of the largest tech companies in the world, whereas in the past they being smaller might have led to that simplicity. Who knows?
Well, and look, and to be fair as well, there's no question at the moment they are making the best products. So let's hope they just tighten their brief and start stopping the confusion that I'm feeling.
Oh, who knows? Maybe the 4 quadrants might come back. Who knows? All right, Steve, I might wrap it up there so I can go off and edit this podcast on my on my Mac that is working perfectly fine as it is. Alrighty, so hope you enjoyed the episode. We'll wrap it up there. You can watch more of our science, technology, and culture topics on our website, scitechculture.com. Watch us on YouTube, Vimeo. We've got our RSS feeds to download us in a podcast app or whatever, however you want to watch us or listen to us. And we greatly appreciate your visits and views and listens. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.